The entertainment world is in utter disbelief. Yandy Smith, the beloved reality TV star, is fighting for her life in the ICU, and doctors are completely baffled. Many are left in shock, with her partner, Mendeecees at her side, devastated and powerless as medical experts desperately try to figure out what's happening. Fans are heartbroken, social media is in chaos, and the tension inside the hospital is at a breaking point. What went wrong? Was this a sudden health scare, or is there something darker behind Yandy's condition? Sources close to the family have revealed terrifying secrets, things the public wasn't supposed to know. And in the middle of it all, Mendeecees is heartbroken, helpless, and demanding answers, while doctors struggle to stabilize Yandy. Whispers of a shocking revelation inside the hospital hallways could change everything. Could this be the moment that changes everything forever? Stay with us as we unravel this gut-wrenching turn of events. Will Yandy make it, or is this the moment that alters everything? Inside the cold, sterile air of the intensive care unit, the steady beeping of the heart monitor filled the room. Machines hummed, for drips clicked, and the faint murmur of nurses and doctors echoed in the background. There, in the center of it all, Yandy Smith lay motionless, her skin pale, lips dry, and her body unnaturally still. Mendeecees stood frozen in the doorway, his breath shallow, hands trembling at his sides. This couldn't be real. It couldn't be happening. Yandy, the strong, unstoppable force who held their family together, was now fighting for her life. His heartbeat thundered in his ears as he took a hesitant step forward. Yandy was covered in wires, an oxygen mask strapped to her face. Her chest barely rose and fell beneath the crisp white hospital sheets. She looked nothing like the woman he had kissed goodbye just hours ago. "Doctor, tell me what's wrong with her?" Mendeecees' voice came out hoarse, barely recognizable. The lead physician, a man in his late 50s with tired eyes and a strained expression, exhaled sharply. "Mr. Harris, we're still running tests. Right now, her vitals are unstable, and we don't know what's causing it." Mendeecees' stomach dropped. "You don't know?" His voice cracked, and his fist clenched. "You're a doctor. You're supposed to know. My wife is in there dying, and you're telling me you don't have an answer?" The doctor remained calm. "We've ruled out a heart attack and a stroke, but something is attacking her body. We're waiting on lab results." Mendeecees had spun. How could this happen? Just this morning, Yandy had been fine. She had been laughing, talking about the kids, handling business calls like she always did. How did everything go wrong so quickly? He turned back to Yandy, the love of his life, the mother of his children, the woman who had always been his rock, and now she was barely hanging on. "Baby, wake up, please," he whispered, reaching for her hand, squeezing it gently. It felt cold, too cold. His throat tightened, and the lump grew bigger. His wife wasn't waking up. The door burst open behind him, and in rushed Judy Harris, his mother. The second she saw Yandy lying in that hospital bed, a gasp escaped her lips. She clasped her hands over her mouth. "Oh, Jesus.
No, no,
no," Judy cried. Mendeecees turned to her, his face twisted with pain. "Ma, she just collapsed out of nowhere. The doctors don't know what's wrong." Judy grabbed his hands, her eyes wide with fear. "What do you mean they don't know?" Her voice trembled. "She was fine this morning, Mendeecees. How does someone just collapse and end up in the ICU?" Mendeecees shook his head, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. "I don't know, Ma, but I swear if something happens to her." His voice cracked. The doctor cleared his throat, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "We're doing everything we can, but right now we need to keep her stable. She's unresponsive, and her oxygen levels are low." Judy's eyes filled with tears as she shook her head.
no.
"No, this isn't happening. This can't be happening." Mendeecees wasn't listening anymore. His attention was fixed on Yandy when suddenly, a loud alarm blared from one of the machines. His body snapped to attention. "What was that?" he demanded. The doctor's face turned grim. Her oxygen levels just dropped. The room erupted into chaos. Nurses rushed to the bed, adjusting IVs, checking tubes, and barking orders. One nurse turned to the doctor. Her breathing is unstable. She's crashing. Mendeecees' blood ran cold.
No. No. No.
Fix it. Do something. He lunged forward, but a nurse blocked him. Sir, you need to step out, she said firmly. I'm not leaving her. Mendeecees roared, his voice echoing in the room. Another alarm blared. The doctor's face tightened. She's going into respiratory distress. We need to intubate her now. Mendeecees lost it.
No.
What does that mean? What does that mean? He demanded, his voice rising in panic. Judy was sobbing now. Oh my God. Oh my God. This can't be happening. The doctor's voice was sharp. We need to get her on a ventilator. Nurses scrambled, and before Mendeecees could react, a nurse grabbed his shoulders and shoved him out of the room. Sir, you need to step out, she commanded. The door slammed shut, and then silence. Mendeecees stood frozen, his breath ragged, his heart hammering in his chest. His hands were clenched so tightly, they hurt. Judy clutched his arm. Oh, God. What if she doesn't make it? Mendeecees couldn't answer. For the first time in his life, he was truly helpless. The cold, fluorescent hospital lights buzzed above him as he paced outside the ICU. His hands clasped together like a desperate man praying for a miracle. He wasn't just praying, he was pleading. God, please don't take her from me, he whispered under his breath. Behind those sterile white doors, Yandy lay motionless, her body hooked up to more machines than Mendeecees could count. He could hear the faint beeping of the monitors through the glass, a painful reminder that she was still alive, but barely. Doctors rushed in and out of the room, their faces masked with urgency. Their hushed conversations sent chills down his spine. Every second felt like an eternity. Judy, the strong, unshakable matriarch of the family, sat in the waiting area, her hands clasped together, her lips moving in silent prayer. Even she, the pillar of their family, looked broken. Mendeecees, you need to sit down, Judy said gently, reaching for his arm. But Mendeecees shook his head, jaw tight. I can't. I won't. I need answers. His mind was racing. Just a few hours ago, Yandy was fine. She had been laughing, making plans, talking about their future. And now she was fighting for her life, and no one had any answers. Just then, the ICU doors burst open. Dr. Whitaker, the lead physician, stepped out, his face grim. Mendeecees' heart nearly stopped. He rushed forward, grabbing the doctor's arm. Tell me something, anything. Is she going to be okay? The doctor sighed, his exhaustion evident. She's stable, but critical. What does that even mean? Mendeecees' voice cracked with frustration. Doctor. Whitaker rubbed the back of his neck. It means she's alive, but she's not breathing on her own. The ventilator is keeping her stable, but we still don't know what caused this. Mendeecees stumbled back, as though the floor had been ripped out from under him. Judy let out a choked sob. Lord, have mercy, she whispered. His chest heaved with anger, bubbling beneath the grief. You're telling me she just collapsed out of nowhere and you don't know why? The doctor hesitated. We're running tests, but we suspect it could be toxic exposure. Mendeecees froze. Toxic exposure? He shook his head. You mean like poison? Dr. Whitaker nodded gravely. We can't confirm yet, but her symptoms are concerning. Sudden respiratory failure, a drastic drop in oxygen levels. It doesn't add up. If someone gave her something, we need to find out what it is. Mendeecees' blood turned to ice. Judy covered her mouth, shaking with fear. Who would do such a thing? Mendeecees clenched his fists. There were plenty of people who didn't like Yandy. Plenty of people who would want to see her gone. Was this a freak medical crisis? Or had someone set her up? Run those damn tests, Mendeecees growled. I need to know who did this. Dr. Whitaker nodded, but before he could say anything else, a loud alarm blared from the ICU. She's crashing, a nurse shouted. Mendeecees felt like his soul was being ripped from his body. No, he cried out, but it was too late. The sound of alarms continued to echo, and Mendeecees knew this was far from over. Screaming, Mendeecees shoved past the doctor. But before he could get inside the ICU, two security guards grabbed him, holding him back. Sir, "You can't be in there," one of them said. "Let me go. That's my wife," Mendeecees shouted, but it was too late. The doors slammed shut in his face. Through the glass window, he saw utter chaos. Nurses rushed around Yandy's bed, doctors shouted instructions, and machines beeped wildly. One of the monitors flashed flatline. Mendeecees' knees buckled as the image of his wife, who had once been so full of life, flashed before him. No, no, no. Yandy, fight. He felt like his heart had stopped. Judy collapsed beside him, sobbing uncontrollably. "Not my baby, Lord, please," she cried. The doctor grabbed paddles, and Yandy's body jerked violently as the shock went through her. No response. Mendeecees' body trembled with terror. He held his breath. Another shock, still nothing. Tears streamed down his face, and his grip on the window tightened. "Baby, don't do this.
Don't leave me."
Another shock. And then, finally, a flicker of hope, the beeping of the heart monitor. "She's back," Dr. Whitaker said, his voice hoarse, but his expression grim. "But she's not out of the woods yet." Mendeecees' breath hitched. He wasn't sure if he was relieved or terrified. "I need to see her," he demanded. The doctor hesitated before nodding. Just for a moment, Mendeecees rushed into the room, his heart pounding. The sound of the ventilator filled the cold, sterile space. Yandy looked so small, so fragile, lying motionless with wires and tubes connected to her. He gently took her hand. "Baby, I'm right here," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You scare me to death, but I know you. You're a fighter. You don't back down from anything. Come back to me, please." But there was no response. The steady beep of the heart monitor was the only sound. Mendeecees' anger and desperation grew. "Who did this to you? Tell me. Give me a sign." He leaned in, his face inches from hers. But still, there was no movement. Then, just as he was about to lose all hope, her finger twitched. Mendeecees froze. Was it real? Her eyes fluttered open, just barely, and for a moment, he thought she was looking at him. But no, she wasn't. She was looking past him, at something or someone at the doorway. He turned, and his blood ran cold. Standing there, at the threshold of the room, was Samantha Wallace. The sight of her made his chest tighten. His breath caught in his throat. He could feel his fists clenching, his body rigid with a mix of rage and disbelief. "What the hell are you doing here?" His voice was raw, barely containing the fury building inside him. Samantha stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply on the hospital floor. She glanced at Yandy's unconscious form before locking eyes with Mendeecees. There was a smug, calculated look on her face as she tilted her head. "I heard about what happened," she said coolly. "Came to see if she made it." Mendeecees' blood boiled. "If she made it," he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Samantha chuckled, almost mocking. "Relax, Mendeecees. I didn't do anything, but I did warn her." "Warn her about what?" Samantha took another step closer, her eyes narrowing with cold satisfaction. "Warned her that being with you would eventually destroy her." Mendeecees' body went rigid. The air between them seemed to grow heavy, suffocating. "You think this is funny?" His voice shook with rage. "You think this is some kind of game? Yandy is fighting for her life, and you're standing here like you knew this was going to happen." Samantha's lips curled into a cruel smirk. "That's the thing, Mendeecees," she said, her voice dripping with venom. "I didn't just know. I made sure." A chilling silence filled the room. The weight of her words hung in the air like a deadly fog. Mendeecees' hands balled into fists. His entire body was trembling, but he held back, barely able to control his fury. This wasn't the time, not yet. "You did this," he whispered through clenched teeth. Samantha didn't flinch. She didn't even try to deny it. "I didn't touch her," she said smoothly, almost casually. "But I told you before, you were playing with fire." Mendeecees' jaw tightened, the muscles in his neck standing out. "Get the hell out," he growled. Samantha simply smiled, unfazed. She turned and walked out of the room, as if she had just dropped a bombshell and was satisfied with the destruction. Mendeecees, still shaking, turned to the doctor. "Run those damn tests," he demanded. "I need to know what's in her system." The doctor nodded, his expression just as grim as Mendeecees'. He rushed out of the room, and Mendeecees was left standing there, his mind racing. Judy, Mendeecees' mother, reached out and grabbed his arm. Her grip was shaky. "Son, what did she mean? Who would do this to Yandy?" Mendeecees didn't have an answer. At least, not yet, but he was going to find out. The toxicology report came back, confirming Mendeecees' worst nightmare. Yandy had been poisoned. A rare, slow-acting toxin had been found in her bloodstream. It wasn't something that would kill immediately, but if left untreated, it would shut down her organs, piece by piece. And the most chilling part? The poison had been in her food, the meal she had eaten just the night before she collapsed. Mendeecees' blood turned cold as the pieces began to fall into place. He remembered the night they ordered dinner. It was from a place they trusted. There had been only one person who had direct access to that meal before it reached Yandy. His mind snapped to attention. Kimbella. Without wasting a second, Mendeecees picked up the phone. His voice was tight with barely contained anger. "We need to talk.
Now."
Kimbella hesitated before responding, her voice sounding off. "Mendeecees, what's wrong?" "You sound... I know everything," Mendeecees interrupted, his voice devoid of emotion. There was silence on the other end before Kimbella spoke again. "Silence," he snapped. "Where are you?" 30 minutes later, they were face to face. Mendeecees slammed the toxicology report down on the table between them, his eyes never leaving Kimbella's face. "Poison in her food?" Kimbella's face went pale as she looked at the report, her breath catching in her throat. Mendeecees' eyes bore into her. "Kimbella, tell me the truth. Did you do this?" Kimbella's hands shook as she took a step back. "I swear I didn't do it. I swear I had nothing to do with it." Mendeecees' eyes darkened. "Then why was your name on the food delivery order?" Kimbella froze. She looked away, avoiding his gaze. "I was just helping. Yandy was busy, and I thought, don't play with me, Kimbella," Mendeecees interrupted. "Why did you do it?" Kimbella's breath hitched, and tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted her to pay." Mendeecees' stomach turned. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You were supposed to be her best friend," he shouted. Kimbella's voice cracked. "I was, but she betrayed me first." Mendeecees' anger surged, and his fists clenched so tightly, his nails dug into his palms. "You don't get to decide who lives and who dies," he growled. Kimbella swallowed hard. "I just wanted her to suffer. I didn't think it would get this bad." Mendeecees shook his head, his chest heaving with frustration. "It's too late for that now." Just as Kimbella tried to reach for the door, 2 officers stepped in, blocking her escape. Mendeecees didn't say a word as they cuffed her and led her out of the room. Her tear-streaked face looked at him one last time, but Mendeecees wasn't moved. She wasn't sorry. She was just caught. Back at the hospital, Yandy slowly opened her eyes again as Mendeecees walked in. She looked weak, fragile, but alive. "Mendeecees," her voice was barely a whisper. He sat beside her, taking her hand gently. "It's over, baby," he murmured. "Kimbella is gone." Tears filled Yandy's eyes. "But why?" Mendeecees sighed, brushing his thumb over her knuckles. "She was never your friend." A heavy silence fell between them. Yandy squeezed his hand, tears still falling down her cheeks. "Thank you for saving me." Mendeecees nodded, his jaw tight. "This ain't over yet," he muttered, deep down knowing that there was still more to this twisted story than anyone realized. The truth had come out, but was it really over? Or was there more to this than anyone had anticipated? Was Kimbella acting alone? Or was someone else pulling the strings from behind the scenes? What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe because trust me, this is just the beginning.